Hello, I'm Mark, and this is the Fast Track Impact podcast for researchers who want to be more productive and achieve real-world impacts from their research. So today I want to follow on from the strand that I started last week when I talked about imposter syndrome, which is fundamentally about our relationship with work, to dive a little deeper than I have done before into the work I've done on work-life balance, which I published in my recent book, The Productive Researcher. And essentially what I want to do here is to show you practically, using two representative days from my life, what it looks like to follow the kind of things that I'm talking about in The Productive Researcher. Now, for those of you who've not read it, it's a bit of a misleading title, I will confess. It's a book, yes, about being more productive, but in order to be able then to be happy producing less and being more. Ultimately, this is a book about work-life balance. It's about reframing that relationship with work. And I really focused on the thinking tools and thinking very deeply about that relationship. And perhaps there weren't as many practical tools as people needed. And I'm going to try and illustrate what this looks like in terms of the actual day-to-day of an academic role. But I think more problematic than that are the deeper critiques and the difficulty with which some people find, how difficult some people find it to believe. So one of the key critiques that I hear on a regular basis as I go out and train based on this in universities is, well, yeah, Mark, that's all good for you as a white, male, middle-aged Russell Group professor. But it doesn't look quite as easy from where I stand. And I think that a lot of those critiques are fair enough. And I have tried to explain in the book how I think that there are things that we can all do, whatever our career stage and wherever we are. But of course, if you are in a professional services role, if you're in a postdoc type role, then there'll be less flexibility in what you can and can't say no to, how you can prioritize, reprioritize, fair enough. But there's always stuff that you can do. And for me, that's a fairly easy critique to overcome, and we can work through examples on the kind of things that you can still do that can really shift things. But the kind of the natural advantage role critique is more challenging, and I think that a lot of people, especially women in my audience, look with quite a lot of skepticism at my claims, given the assumption that there must be someone sitting here behind me, a woman they suspect, who is doing all of the hard graft of bringing up my children, so I can run around the country doing trainings and being productive. And it's a fair critique, and so this is something that I will address in the next revision to the book. So because I self-published it, every 1,000 copies, I can, if I wish, make some minor changes. So I think I'm going to do something along this line because it's such a credible but answerable critique. And the reality for me is that my wife has always had a full-time role. Now, ostensibly, it was part-time, but she worked 36 hours a week as a part-time doctor. So for most people, 36 hours a week is a full-time job. And that's been ever since we had children. She took maternity leave, but she went back to work. And this was unusually challenging in terms of me being able to fly around the world doing the stuff that academics do, because she was in Inverness, which is a fairly long train ride away from us. So she was away from home 3 days in a row and 3 nights in a row. And that meant that for me, usually maximum, I was able to be away for 2 days in a week, because when she wasn't there, I was there as the full-time dad, working from home, picking up children from school, taking them to clubs, whatever it was that had to be done. And so this has changed. She came out of her role in the NHS when I joined Newcastle, so that's 2.5 years ago, something like that. Or was it coming 3 years? In more recent time, she has taken a different role. And that was in part because we weren't happy that so often we were kind of passing ships in the night. The kids would go to bed with one parent, they'd wake up with another, and we thought, yeah, this isn't ideal. But we didn't have lots of babysitters. There wasn't the option to say, well, I'm going to take some time to go to this conference or be at this important meeting that my funders are telling me I have to be at, and also be at on a day when my wife was working. Because, yeah, I mean, I can count on one hand the days per year when we did get help to do stuff like that. It just wasn't really an option for us. So much so that I said no to multiple things, important things. And actually, this was part of my training in how to say yes to say no, because I was saying yes to my family in order to say no to my colleagues. And this didn't always go down well, especially when these were my funders and others. But it taught me that, you know what, when you stick to your guns and you say, look, I have no option, this is a childcare issue, I have to be at home these days, I cannot make this meeting, I cannot travel, then it is remarkable how many opportunities came up for me to join via Skype, or how many things were in fact rearrangeable, or how many things actually didn't matter if I wasn't there. So it helped me really get a bit of perspective. The most extreme example of this was when I finished co-authoring a report for the United Nations. Didn't realise that the small print said that we had to present this at a conference to one of the Rio conventions. It just so happened the conference was in Mexico, and I said to these guys, look, here's the bottom line. You're asking me to do this at fairly short notice, and I've got these 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, but Tuesday evening I have to be back because my wife will be leaving Tuesday evening to be at her work on Monday morning. So there is no choice here. My childcare arrangements mean non-negotiable. I'm really sorry, but I can't make it. And so we tried all manner of alternatives, and in this case, they were unbudging. No, we want you, and we want you here in person to talk to these guys. And I was unmovable in this. And eventually, their final parting shot was, so here's your air ticket, and we've booked you a flight that gets you back on Tuesday afternoon. And so I endured a day trip to Mexico. The point is that for many of us, there are non-negotiables because of our context. And for me, that has been a big part of my career as well. Not all of us get the luxury of being able to say yes to all the things we want because of natural constraints, and I have experienced them myself as well. So let's have a look at a day in my life, and I'm going to do 2 days. Today is going to be a day when I'm working from home, so you get a flavour of what that looks and feels like. And then tomorrow is going to be a day working from University of Leeds. I'm a visiting professor there. I've got a few projects there, so I'm there working on stuff tomorrow. And I'm going to draw 2 themes out of this. Maybe I'll draw some more by the end, but at this point, I'm thinking 2 themes in particular. So the first is work-life balance and the link between work-life balance and mental health. And I've decided to draw this out explicitly because mental health problems are on the rise in the academy. I don't have the research to guarantee that this is a causal relationship, but we also know that the number of hours people are working are going up, and it doesn't take a lot of intelligence to work out that there's probably a link between the two. I'm also spurred on by the ongoing stigmatization around this, and I think that it's really important to talk about our mental health. When I was in my former role, my last job, I had some really major problems, what you might describe as a mental breakdown, based on a whole load of just stuff that was happening in my life that I wasn't able to cope with. It pushed me over the edge. And I was allowed to go down to 4 days a week in order to get treatment to recover. And my boss at the time told me, look, don't tell anyone that you're taking a day per week off to do this. I'm giving you permission to do that. But my recommendation is that you don't make this public knowledge. And I said, why? Assuming that people would be upset that I was getting a day off and still on full pay. And she said, no, in my experience, people use things like this against you. And you don't want to be advertising the fact that you're taking time out for a mental health problem. And in my current role, I just found out last week that I've got a conflict with a colleague. These things happen, sadly, on a regular basis in the academy. And it turns out that as part of this conflict, this colleague has been saying that I am mentally ill. And this is a situation where I've drawn a red line. I've said, well, I take a zero tolerance approach to certain things. And in order to make that understandable, I'm explaining to this person, well, this is why I have to take a zero tolerance approach. And I explained very briefly in very vague terms that this is a vulnerability for me. This is a big issue, and so that's why I'm drawing a line. And for me, that is entirely legitimate. I think we all can cope with different levels of stressors, and it's important to understand our weaknesses, our vulnerabilities, and to be able to say, no, you know what, actually, maybe someone else could take that, but actually I can't, and I'm saying that at this point, no. It has to stop, and the fact that this is something that, so I'm told. I mean, this is a good colleague of mine who has had this. Who knows if it's true or not? But so I'm told. It is being used against me effectively to stigmatise me. Really is pushing me to say, you know what, guys. We do need to talk about this. We need to normalise this. It's so prevalent. It's so common. And where I'm at is that actually I've recovered from all this stuff, but I just know that I have vulnerabilities. And so these are the things that I put into my life day to day. I'll give you some examples that keep me healthy mentally, that keep me resilient so that when I do get into a really stressful situation, I'm able to survive that situation and continue in good mental health. So this morning, I'm working from home, and this is, as it happens, from my research on my work-life balance. This is, I'm going to predict, going to be a less productive day in terms of the number of hours spent working than normal. But I'm okay with that because it all averages out. So I think I said in the former episode, I did a 5-week test of this, exactly how much time do I spend working, and as if by magic, and this is pretty crazy, but it comes out at 37 hours per week, which is what most people are contracted to do for a full-time position. And I was a bit suspicious because I thought, I work long days when I'm away, and I thought I worked more than 37 hours a week. And it turns out the reason for that is that I invest time in myself and my family on the days when I work at home. And I actually work fairly contracted, shorter days, which makes up for the longer days when I'm away. So this morning, the first thing that I did after breakfast was to go for a bike ride. And so for me, exercise is one of the things that I've built in as part of my own resilience in terms of my own mental health, which is really important for me. So I'm out there on my bike. This is about exercise, but it's also about mindfulness and trying to just empty my mind of all of the random thoughts and plans for the day, or whatever else, to just get to this kind of place of peace where I'm just focusing on, the colour of the fields with the morning sun rising over them, the bird song, the sound of my pedals whirring around, my breathing, etc., etc. Great. I did a quick check of my email when I got back in, just on my phone. Is there anything crazy going on? It doesn't look like there's anything too mental going on. Cool. So it's 9 o'clock now. I've sent one email to one of my colleagues saying, it looks like we've got 2 meetings in the diary. What's going on today? Other than that, I'm leaving my email for now. So I'm in my office now. It's 9:15, something like that, and I've got a whole lot of things that I need to do on my to-do list, and I'm asking myself, what is my most important priority? And actually, for me, this is on a Monday morning. Habitually, I will do my podcast. And this is something I've chosen to do at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning to ground me, to center me, to remind me, actually, what is this week about? What am I fundamentally trying to achieve with my career, with my life, etc. And the podcast integrates a lot of stuff for me. And I've had a bit of a hiatus, so yeah, let's do this. Let's do this morning. I'm caught up enough. I'm never going to be completely caught up, so this morning I restart my podcast. And this is now a values-based decision, saying, well, what are the most important things to me? It's this idea of empathy. And how I express empathy through my work is via impact, doing research that will actually enable people to do new things, better things, help people, benefit people. And of course, through my role as a father, as a husband, as part of my family, I enact that value of empathy. So let's start with something very deeply values-based and think about impact. And let's think about it in some quite deep ways that help me make explicit the links between the impact agenda and these much broader things that are actually empowering and animating me. So that was meant to be an hour, giving me half an hour to sort out my emails. And in actual fact, it took me so long to actually prepare the podcast that I ended up going right up to past when I had a teleconference with some colleagues. So still not got to my email yet. I'm quickly finishing my podcast, pressing save as I sign into Skype. Only 2 minutes late, could have been worse. And now we're having a chat about a research workshop that we're facilitating together next week in London, going through our facilitation plan. Great. So we're best part of an hour on that. And I'm figuring, if we can finish this call maybe 10 minutes early, that gives me 10 minutes to nail my email before my next call, which is meant to be taken in the car. So we did that, 10 minutes, I'm opening my email, and by this time I can see that there's been a bit of a carry-on on the email. We've got a major grant proposal going in tomorrow. It's, £750,000, and yeah, I'm the lead for Newcastle. And people haven't been able to get into the form. There's been some kind of issue, and everyone's going mental, going, the deadline's tomorrow, we need to get into the form. And taking a few deep breaths, trying to digest, rather than just kind of knee-jerk and, looking like, it's been solved. Someone's got into the form, disaster averted, they need a copy of my CV, great. Here's my CV, it looks like everything's under control. If it's not, can you give me a call so I don't miss this email because I'm about to disappear, or text me. Great. So we moved from that into my phone call in the car. But actually, you know what? This took 15 minutes rather than 10 minutes. Oops. I'm now late leaving. I'm going to be late for my appointment. I'm late into my next call. I'm apologising profusely. But you know what? Some of that stuff was important. But 15 minutes, and it looked like most of my colleagues had spent most of the morning. Maybe I should have spent some time that morning. I had no idea who had the form, how to get into it. I probably wouldn't have been any help, but hey. So 15 minutes rather than all morning, and I've kind of nailed the worst of my email. In the car, this is now a conversation with someone about a new collaboration. I was skeptical. It sounds like they've got something interesting to offer as a win-win. Cool. We're going to meet next week in London after my research workshop. So then I get to my appointment, and my appointment is with my therapist. So I have a counsellor, and ever since I was depressed. So I forget the years kind of blends, but it's been 3 years or so, perhaps more, 4 since I finished antidepressants. I recovered from depression. But for me, part of my resilience is that every other week I spend an hour with a therapist. Maybe there's nothing to talk about, maybe there's something, but I have that in there so that if something scary happens, there's that safety net. I know a few days' time I'll be going to my therapist, I can talk this through, there's that sense of continuity. There's safety there for me. So I'm there for an hour, and then driving home. So that's effectively my lunch break. And during the first part of my journey, so it's a 50-minute journey, I'm eating my lunch, and I'm listening to an audio version of the Bible and thinking a bit. And I'm then putting on some music. So I have some fairly questionable taste, I will confess. So I put on the latest release by Autechre, which is a fairly it's industrial, experimental techno, I guess. But to most people, it just sounds like noise. But for me, this is a great way of staying awake while I'm driving. I did have an entirely full night's sleep, but I was beginning to feel sleepy post-lunch, maybe, and meditative. So now I'm using all of my concentration as I drive to listen to that music, to pick out the rhythms and the tunes, because it's not easy to find them. And in that meditative state, getting to that place where I'm emptying my mind, I'm being mindful of my body, of just... not constantly planning what's happening next, what's in my email, that kind of stuff. I'm arriving home fairly chilled. And back home, I'm straight in the door, and it's my job to make tea tonight. So before I come up to record this podcast, I'm fixing tea. So I've done all the basic prep. And made myself a cup of coffee at the same time, and then that's me up to my office, checking my email again just to see anything crazy going on, sending a couple of quick replies from my phone. And the goal is, I'm looking at my watch now, in 3 minutes' time, I need to be downstairs if I'm going to get dinner on the table. We're having it at 4:00 tonight, so I'm also already regretting having a late lunch on my way home in the car. And then we're taking kids to various clubs and such like. So work will be finishing in 3 minutes. And that is precisely, I'm going to guess, 2 minutes for me to zap through any other emails that are looking scary, and send any holding emails to any other ones that need dealing with, to say I'll get back to you tomorrow morning before 9 o'clock, because I know I'm getting up early. And that is where I'm going to talk to you again. So I'm now recording this from the car on my way from home into the airport. It is 6:15, and I am reflecting on the day ahead. So I've worked out that I've got about 6 hours between when I arrive at the airport and my meeting. And that's a chunky amount of time, so I look to do more substantive tasks in that amount of time. Yes, it's bitty, but I'm kind of viewing this as 6 hours with enforced breaks between airports and trains and platforms and all the rest of it. So 6 hours, and I'm thinking that, looking through the various different projects, papers, things I've got on the go, and I'm going to zoom in on a paper I've got due. We're presenting this at a conference next month, and then submitting it to the peer-reviewed literature after that, once we get some feedback from people. I need to make sure I finish the analysis on this. So I think the analysis is finished. This is the qualitative component I'm doing. My colleagues are doing the quantitative linguistic analysis. But I need to check there's nothing else I need to look at from the qualitative perspective. So I'm going to systematically go through that. But that's my systematic bit, which I'll do in the airport. But the imaginative bit I'm going to do as I'm driving. So just thinking big picture, what are the big questions I might love to answer from this data. So this is a paper about what made 4-star in REF 2014, looking at high versus low scoring case studies from that database. And I've been discussing it with people I've been training over the last few months, and I'm just kind of racking my brain to think of some of the most interesting questions people have asked, and the most important answers people have wanted, to see, what could I do, and I'll pick that all up when I get to the airport. If there's not much for me to do in terms of additional analysis, then I'll focus on writing the paper. That's the next thing I'll do. I'm kind of thinking, I've got some buffer in here, so in an ideal world I'll be done on that by the time I'm getting onto my train in Manchester, and that then gives me ample time to prepare for my meeting and sort the various emails and tasks that I identified yesterday but didn't do. But of course, I'm giving myself a bit of buffer here, because when you're on a roll with writing or analysis, you need to just keep that ball rolling. So I may continue. I've got, I think, an hour and a half on the train. I will see how that goes. But worst case scenario, I've got an hour before my meeting when I get to Leeds over lunch, and that's more than enough time to prepare for my meeting and, if nothing else, do the tasks that came out of my emails without replying to them all. But in an ideal world, we'll see. I'll maybe check in with you at that point again. I should have ideally actually gotten through the email as well as done the tasks. But I'm usually over-optimistic with this kind of stuff. The key thing that I'm trying to get across here is how I'm prioritising. So I've got time. I've chunked that time up. I've identified a time where I can do something substantive on a paper. I've got 2 tasks. That fits. I've chosen that based on priorities that, hey, I'm a researcher, I do research, I've got some big important tasks to do. This has been a long-running thing, and if you don't identify chunks of time like this to do those big tasks, then they'll never happen, and I'm trying not to let the pressure of email and all the things that I spotted yesterday that I need to do build up. I have a to-do list that I can email things into on Evernote. So yesterday it was a few things that I spotted. I thought, I need to make sure I do that and I don't lose that in that's my inbox, and I just forwarded it without doing anything, so just forwarded it into my inbox. And actually, in most cases, I sent an email saying, spotted this, I'll do it, and I'll get back to you by whenever. So there's a bunch of those things, and they're all fairly small things, but they need to be done. So I'll get onto them by lunchtime, if nothing else. But ideally, I'll have got through my email. But the point is, I'm not allowing that to dominate. I'm not thinking, right, you know what, when I get to the airport, I need to start getting through that big, long backlog. I'm continuing to scan, continuing to identify important things that need to be done, doing them immediately if they are really, really urgent. That reminds me, that was a slight flaw in my plan yesterday. After I left you, I gave myself those 2 or 3 minutes to do one final check that there wasn't anything too scary going on the email, and there was something very scary happening in the email. My colleague from professional services told me, we want you to submit your JES form. So those in the UK will understand, as part of the funding process, there's a form you have to put in, and we want it in today, not tomorrow. I had to sort that one out. But my priority was I had to get dinner on the table for the kids because they'd missed their clubs if I didn't. So I started on it, realised that I'd got about 10 minutes more to go, and emailed her to say, look, really sorry about this. I will get it to you before 5, but 5 at the latest, because that's when I know she's going home. And she's like, it's for these guys to look at tomorrow, so 5 is fine. I managed to find 10 minutes between clubs on my laptop, so it didn't interfere with anything. The juggle of academic life and parenting, the joys.
but we got there in the end. And of course, for those of you who've read The Productive Researcher, for me it's a really important red line that when I'm at home I don't work evenings. And so that's all I did after I spoke to you, and I didn't look at my emails again. In fact, I haven't even looked at them yet this morning. I'll do that, my first kind of scan through when I get to the airport. So me and my wife spent some time together. We thought we might do some research for our planned holiday in France, go and have a look at some of the cool stuff we might do. But the conclusion was we're going to take it in turns to be able to veto more creative things if we're brain dead. My wife had a particularly challenging day, and she was like, "No, we need to veg." So MasterChef was our solution. Yeah, you're getting all of my bad TV taste as well as bad music taste in this episode. So I feel refreshed. I managed to get an early night despite my early morning, and I'm going to go away and do my thinking tasks as I drive to the airport. One other thinking task, actually, if I've got time, I've got a plan I'm hatching to turn a 3-star paper into a 4-star paper. So that workshop I was telling you about in London, we're doing a stakeholder analysis, which is something I do on a regular basis. But I've been hatching a new way of doing stakeholder analysis over the last year. It's kind of been evolving in my mind. And the idea is we're going to try out this new approach in London and see how that goes, and that's the data for this paper. But it's just one workshop. I'm not convinced this is empirically good enough to get us a really high quality paper. So I'm thinking I've got a data source. So I've over the last year or so, I've been training people in this new approach, and just kind of suggesting, in addition to the standard stuff, you might want to ask this additional question and see how this goes. And the feedback I've been getting is that this is actually a really useful additional question that does something very different and additional that you need to do in a stakeholder analysis. So yeah, I'm wondering, GDPR compliance, who can I get back to, who I've trained to ask? So did you go away and actually use this or not? How did it work? Is there a before and after sample that I can get from people I've trained before and after I started introducing this new idea? Could I go back to the literature, find people who've done stakeholder analysis the traditional way? I don't know. Let's have a think about this. In theory, we've got something that could be that major methodological innovation. There's been no innovation in this method since the 1980s when it was first developed. And I think there's a strong theoretical argument as to why this is important, and methodologically, my hope is we can prove that this actually enables you to do new and better things. So maybe there's a 4-star contribution here. And I clearly need a new 4-star paper. So let's have a think. Can I do that? So driving time, thinking time, it's always good. I enjoy. So I'll have to do some thinking, and I will check in with you again when I get to Leeds. So I've made it to University of Leeds, where I have an afternoon's worth of meetings. I am co-investigator on a project that has an impact evaluation group. So we give out funding as part of this project, and it's all for generating impact. And I've got to evaluate that with a group of colleagues here in Leeds. So I was lucky enough to complete all of the analysis that I wanted. I got halfway through one particularly boring number crunching job and realised that it was going to take up the rest of the flight time if I didn't do something about it. So I asked my PA to finish that for me, because it was fairly basic stuff. So that is outsourced and coming to me later this evening. I believe she said that she's working late tonight, so we'll see what comes out of that.
And at the end of the day, I am here having completed that, written a bit more of the paper that it goes into, and I've gone through all of the key things that were on my to-do list that had to be done by today, and the things that kind of emerged from the email as being important things to do yesterday. I did, however, run out of time to then actually run through and read my emails properly, which was my goal. I didn't quite get there yet, sadly. I did have some spare time, and I could have done that, but I decided that actually I've been having some problems seeing into the distance, and I walked past an optician and decided to see if I could get an appointment. So some time well spent on my physical health in the last couple of days, as well as about my mental health, and there will be a new look Mark Reed coming to you with glasses very shortly. That's the plan. I've got to get them ordered. But yeah, I'm apparently legal to drive, but only just. So yeah, these things creep up on you, apparently in your 40s. So there you go. So yeah, I'm going to get on with my meetings now. And I did manage to do my meeting prep. So I left myself a slightly uncomfortable 20 minutes at the end as a result of the NI test, which took longer than I thought. But 20 minutes turned out was entirely sufficient to make this happen. So I'm going in well enough prepared, and looking forward to the rest of my afternoon. So I'm still at University of Leeds, and I've just had the last meeting of the day with a postdoc on one of my projects, Dr. Dylan Young. And at the end of our meeting, I managed to persuade him to spend a couple of minutes just telling us, from his perspective, what the productive researcher looks like. So you got a copy of the book when you started this position, I believe, from me. We did some coaching around that over a period of months. And you really have tested this out to see how it works. And what's interesting, I think, is that a lot of people say, well, yeah, Mark, but you're a professor, you've got teams of people doing stuff under you, it's easy for you. And as an early career researcher, I wonder, what does this look like for you, Dylan?
Well, it actually has changed my way of working substantially. Actually, I came in late to academia, so I worked in a manufacturing environment before, and it was normal to work very long hours, and usually sometimes at the weekend, sometime at the weekend. And people have said to me before that you can be more productive by working less time. And whilst you can read about it and accept that those things can be true, or were very possibly true, it's actually hard to change the way you work and to get your mental attitude around working that way different. So to do something different. And for me, I think there's a couple of things which came together at the same time. There's your book on productive research, and there's also a book called Deep Work by Cal Newport, and they both link together very well about prioritising, focusing, and quite importantly, being rigorous about the time you spend doing work and how you'll become less productive the more hours you keep working. And I guess the other thing for me, which really helped me to move into a different mode, was that you were very supportive of me doing that. So I think it helps a lot to know that you're working for somebody who supports that change. For example, we've talked about this before, but on most days I don't look at my email until lunchtime, and that's because I decide the night before what I'm going to get done on the next morning, and I know that I need to, if I'm going to focus on it and get some solid work done on it, then I don't need to be distracted. And one of the ways for me to do that is to not get involved in email discussions, and so I do that after lunch or just before lunch, and then into the afternoon. So it's still challenging, and it's tempting to stray back to old ways, but I have found when I have then wanted to do things, or when I've needed to do things at weekends, it's because I've been keen to do them. So it's not as I don't work any extra time in the evening or at a weekend, but it's because I'm quite looking forward to doing it. So I don't think it affects my work-life balance at all, and that has definitely improved since sort of changing the way I work.
Fantastic. It's really interesting just to get a sense of how this looks and feels from your perspective, and really just great to hear that it is working, that you feel you have much greater work-life balance and you have the confidence to do that, and at the same time that hasn't compromised your productivity. You don't have to take a hit in terms of the output when you decide to work less. I am conscious of time. We both have a train to catch at this point. So I think at this point we're going to head towards the station. And then I'm going to check in with you, I think, one last time to conclude this week's podcast from Glasgow, which is where I'm going next at the end of the day. And we'll see where we are then. Okay, so I'm not actually in Glasgow yet, and I thought I would do one final interim, penultimate re-recording before I get there. I'm currently walking to the train station, and it's been a fairly intense day so far, I will say. I haven't actually had a proper break, but I had my lunch while I was doing my work, and the eye test wasn't really a break, but I've had multiple strolls between different forms of transport and different venues and such like. So that's about as good as that bit of the day has gone. But I feel energised. It's been a positive day. So all my meetings went according to plan. As part of the walk, I've been prioritising what I'm going to do when I actually get to my train. I haven't worked out how many hours I've got yet, but I've got a good chunk of time between Leeds and Glasgow. And the first thing I will do is to scan my email, because I haven't really done a thorough job of that yet today. Make sure that there isn't anything too scary going on. I will check everything that my PA Maddie has sent to me, any others in my VIP list. I will and then send emails to other people saying, yep, got your email, I'll do this by whenever, and stick that into my to-do list with the date of the deadline that I've told them I'll do the thing by. The idea is I will actually get through my email properly and reply to them all, but I'm leaving that to the end of the day with whatever energy I've got left at that point, because there's a bunch of things I need to sort out from the meetings, so a lot of actions, and so just the process of sorting through them all and working out, okay, which ones do I need to prioritise, which ones can I stick onto my to-do list. So I've got the urgent ones that I have to go away and do, and I'll do that as my second priority. One of those is maybe not so urgent, but it's an important one. One of the meetings I had was with some co-authors for a paper. So I'm going to try and do those revisions while they're still fresh in my mind, because it was a very inspiring chat. Lots of great ideas. The next thing on my list, priority emails and prioritising what's there, followed then by actions arising from our meetings. Then I've still got a bunch of other things which I've identified as I scan my emails, things that people need doing by today. What is it? I've got a progression report for a PhD student. I got an urgent email saying that I got the deadline wrong, and it was this week, not next week, that they were expecting it. So I said, sorry, give me till the end of the day, I'll do it. Undergraduate dissertation students looking for feedback on their survey design. So I've gotten through half of it, but I didn't quite finish that earlier on. Approbation form, the list goes on. Things that have to be done, and today. And then my final priority is the stuff from my to-do list that has been stacked up, in this case for a good few weeks, with a deadline for tomorrow, and the key one, it's a report for the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. They've asked me to co-edit it. There are some issues with it, so I know where I need to look, what I need to try and sort. That's a theory, but it could take a bit of time. And then what time I've got left from that will be for email. We'll see how we get on by the end of the day. So for now, I'm just arriving at the train station, so I'm going to take a break, the first proper break of the day, at least half an hour to eat some food. I'll catch up on social media, and continue a conversation I've been having with my wife and children, who are all very excited to see me in glasses. I'm sadly disappointing them because I have to order the prescription. So no images of Mark in glasses yet, but they will come at some point, I promise you. Okay, so I will catch you in Glasgow. That will be my final one. So more soon. So I made it to my hotel. It is 10:45. I had a particularly long day. So it's been until 10:15 I got off my train, and I figured, you know what, I'm just going to work on this train because it's too noisy to actually get any quality relaxation time. And my relaxation time is going to happen in a moment when I finish recording this. I've got some noise cancelling headphones, and this is still potentially productive time for me. Now, I'm fairly tired, so this is not going to be time for doing any particularly deep thinking, or any kind of really substantive writing or anything like that. But I still have a very long to-do list, and of course those emails that I've still not properly got to yet. So having looked back, I'm reckoning I've worked about 12 hours today, subtracting time for my dinner, the eye test, and the various micro breaks that I took across the day, as I moved between transport and venues and waited in queues and all that kind of stuff. 12 hours, maybe 12 and a half max, and yesterday 4 hours, maybe 4 and a quarter max that I did. That's subtracting my therapy session and the drive home, but including the drive there because I did a phone call on the way. So on average, that's looking at just over 8 hours, if I'm conservative on that. This is about the longest kind of day that I do. I started early in the airport lounge when I arrived in Aberdeen, and I worked until I eventually arrived in Glasgow this evening. So I'm pretty much on target for the 37 hours, and you can begin to see how that actually works. Now you may be sitting thinking, well, you know what I just did was not that healthy, and I could probably have taken some more breaks, but I was on a roll. I also had some fairly limited time at various points when I thought I might be taking a break. That was partly my fault for going and taking my eye test, but hey. But for me, that is possible because I had a full 8 hours sleep last night. I will be getting another full sleep tonight. I don't have to get up until 8 tomorrow morning.
I will, and I did all this kind of physical, mental health stuff yesterday as well. And I kind of peppered through today with micro, not meditation, but mindfulness type exercises as I was walking, as I was waiting, trying to just zoom out and not just get trapped in the melee of pressure of thoughts. And I think that the key thing here is resilience, and so it's possible to cope very well with a long day like today, when actually yesterday was a very short day, and not just short, but focusing on some really important stuff for my resilience. So for me, that was a combination of physical health, looking after my mental health, spiritual practice. And I guess the question from me to you is, what are the things that you are plumbing into your weekly, or in my case, monthly, when it comes to therapy sessions? But on a regular basis, what are the things you're doing on purpose to make sure that you are resilient? So that if you need to do a longer day, like I did today. If you have a day where everything goes wrong, you get some bad news, there's some kind of failure that comes up, that you don't crash and burn. That actually, I'm still here. I'm swimming. I'm not sinking. It's all good. And I think we do need to think about this, because life just takes over. Whether it's home life and the pressure of looking after 3 kids at home. Whether it's the to-do list that is never complete. Talking of that, I should say, well, how did I get on? And you're probably all wondering, did I ever get to my email? And the answer is, well, yeah, most of it actually, not all of it. It's there still, but I'm not allowing that to create a huge pressure of what are those emails that I maybe haven't seen properly yet. They're there, and maybe I'll get to them one day. And if I don't, the ones from yesterday that maybe won't even get seen by tomorrow, and that's it, they've gone. Well, if they're important enough, I'm hoping that someone somewhere will get back in touch with me. But you know, it's about loosening the psychological power that email has, because I think for me this is one of the key reasons why we don't prioritize. Why is it that I can't get to the end of the day without having seen every single email properly and replied to it all? And the sense that there's kind of some bomb sitting there that's going to go off, and it's ticking if I don't do it. Is the world going to end if I haven't seen all my emails? Probably not. But the point is, I've got a system that means that I'm scanning everything, so I shouldn't, in theory, miss anything important. And when I don't have time to actually read it properly or do anything with it, then I'm sending this into my to-do system. I'm allocating a date to it, or negotiating a date with the person. Stuff will get done. So I'm not ignoring my email, and I think if I did, all of my colleagues would start jumping up and down, rightly so. But I'm making sure this is not the thing that is driving what I'm doing. It's my priorities that are driving me. And so the rest of that to-do list, how does that fit with my priorities? These were mainly administration tasks. There was one thing on my to-do list for tomorrow, which was the IUCN report. I took a look at it and realised, oh, this is big. It was a very, very long report. And I realised, you know what, I do not have time or brain power to actually do this justice at the moment. So that is pushed to tomorrow. Well, the deadline was tomorrow, so hey, that's fine. I now know how big it is. I've allocated a train journey to that. Stick that into my diary to remind myself this train journey is for that report, Mark, don't forget. The other stuff, this was my probation form, doing some stuff for one of my undergraduate students. I've got a marking deadline to kind of tomorrow. I should get it done by tomorrow, end of the week at the worst. That's also sitting there, and my priority here is that for me the value that sits underneath my priorities is empathy. And this is about being an empathic researcher and colleague and teacher. So I empathise with those students. That dissertation student who's saying, I really want to send this survey out tomorrow. Mark, can you feedback on it today? Well, maybe that's an unreasonable suggestion, but actually I said, yeah, I can do that. And I did that for him. A bit later in the day than I thought, but I did it. Those colleagues who are waiting for those forms, rather than making them wait for weeks and having them to waste time chasing me, to say, well, okay, it's a form. It's maybe going to take me a few minutes rather than hours, but I'm sticking it into my to-do list system. I'm making it happen on the day that you've requested it. And so you get to the end of a train journey like that, and the majority of it was on bitty things, admin type things, by and large, which was all I was capable of doing mentally anyway. But I used that time usefully, and actually by the end of it, I feel like, yeah, I achieved something important that is actually taking me closer to being the kind of person that I want to be day to day, and meeting my priorities. And as it happens, I also did spend maybe half an hour, 3/4 of an hour on a paper. There were a couple of revisions that that I wanted to do to a paper based on one of the meetings I had when I was in Leeds. In particular to a diagram, and you know what it's like with these kind of things. It was there, it was in my head, based on the conversation. I need to get this on paper, but it was for a paper on evaluating impact. So I want to actually show that in a presentation tomorrow, ideally. So yeah, let's prioritise that in among all of this stuff. And perhaps that's the reason why I didn't get through all my emails. But hey, it was fun, and it'll be useful for tomorrow. And it's kept me kind of motivated and engaged with something a little bit more creative that I did have brain power to do. So the themes that I told you we'd look at in this episode: values-based priorities and mental health. I hope that these have been implicitly clear throughout, as I've just said. Health, whether it's mental health or physical health, it's about balance. It's about getting rest. It's about doing the things that are most important to you, putting those things first, including my family, including my resilience. The values-based priorities. Well, I hope this hasn't come across just as a fairly boring list of Mark telling us what he's doing and listing all of his jobs. I'm not trying to get sympathy or provoke envy or anything like that. I am trying, when I discuss these lists, to show you how I prioritise and reprioritise again and again throughout my day. And I'm keeping an eye on those priority lists, and I'm evoking the values that are behind them to decide what actually is the priority rather than just the most urgent and important to-do list item, and putting that first so that I remain engaged and motivated and inspired. And again, you get that positive feedback. I'm engaged, I'm motivated, I'm inspired, and therefore I do say no to the psychological pressure of just trawling through my emails. And by contrast, there's a really significant difference. The traditional approach of, well, I open my emails and I work through them all one by one, and I do the tasks as they arise, maybe just putting off a few of the urgent, so a few of the bigger ones. Well, yeah, it doesn't actually get the important things done, and it's a bit haphazard, and I get this feeling at the end of the day that I'm spending the whole life on email, serving everyone else's priorities and never ever getting to anything that's important to me. I think that when you do prioritise in this way, and it's linked to your values, then the great thing is I get to the end of my day, and I look back at an entire train journey, and I don't think, man, I could have spent that writing a paper. But I think, you know what, that was time well spent. That admin, that marking, that whatever it is that you're doing that might demotivate you, you're saying, no, this is why it is important. I get to the end of my day with a warm glow because I've enacted my values, I've done important things, I've met my priorities. And on Friday, when I have a day working from home and I'm fairly unproductive, as is highly likely this coming Friday, I don't beat myself up and say, man, that entire day, and how many hours did you work? And what did you do? Wasting time doing this or that or the next thing? And actually, no, that wasn't wasting time. I was focusing on my physical health, on my mental health, on my family, on things that are of fundamental importance to me. And I'm building resilience now as I move into my weekend, and as a result of that resilience, I'm able to move into my weekend having not completed everything on my to-do list, having sent a few emails to a few people saying, I'm really sorry, can I get this to you on Monday? Or making some kind of plan B if need be, because actually taking my weekend off is important. And so for me, I'm reflecting on the last 2 days. This has been 2 days in my life, and the value, empathy, and my main research priority, which is impact. I feel like I've gotten closer to those things. I've gotten substantially further with a paper that is all about impact. I've maybe not done any research impact, but I've recorded this podcast, and for me that is a tick in the box. I've done something these last 2 days that has hopefully made a difference to someone. Well, I'll let you be the judge of that. So it is now time to relax, have a good book, have a glass of wine as well, and I'm going to go and chill, and I will finish it here. So wherever you are, I hope you're going to get some time to chill. If not right now, depending on where you're listening to this, then you're plumbing this in. You're deciding, how do I carve out that quality relaxation time? How do I create that resilience in my week? And whatever it is that you're going on to next, I hope that somewhere in the day or the hours ahead of you, you are able, based on this, to make some time, even a small amount of time, for something linked to your values that is for you a priority.